the evacuations. What about the use of military aircraft? Would that happen in conjunction with
Correct.
that or subsequent to?
That is something that is definitely underway. And of course, we're going to use that in conjunction. We want as many planes, whether they're chartered, commercial, or military, taking Americans out of the Middle East and returning them safely home. So yes. Andrew, go ahead. You're welcome.
At the top of the briefing, you listed a long list of grievances against the Iranian government, going back to the takeover of the embassy in '79, barracks bombing in the '80s, etc. But no one from the administration has laid out the imminent threat that was supposed to be taken care of by this. And the rationales offered by, say, Secretary Rubio, the president's national security advisor, said that the threat was retaliation against American interests from Iran after Israeli strikes. The president says it was his own feeling that Iran was going to attack. Why is it that across the administration you can't say what the imminent threat against the United States was that required us to launch this? And also, Prime Minister Starmer told Parliament today that his reason that he didn't allow the use of British bases was that he was not satisfied that there was a lawful basis and a viable, thought-through plan. Was there an attempt to provide the UK government with a legal basis for these strikes and a viable, thought-through plan?
To the first question, I completely reject the premise of your question. You have had the President of the United States, the Secretary of War, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Vice President of the United States, the Secretary of State, and now I am out here today to explain to you exactly what led the President to make the decision to launch Operation Epic Fury. And President Trump does not make these decisions in a vacuum. This decision to launch this operation was based on a cumulative effect of various direct threats that Iran posed to the United States of America, and the president's feeling based on fact that Iran does pose an imminent and direct threat to the United States of America, based on the fact that they are the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, based on the fact that they were rapidly and aggressively building up their ballistic missile program to give themselves immunity within their country alongside their navy, so that inside their country they could continue to create nuclear weapons and nuclear bombs, which would of course pose a risk to Americans in the region and even Americans one day here at home. And then another point on this is the president found that through these extensive, exhaustive, failed negotiations with Iran, that they were hell-bent on death and destruction. So again, the president was not going to be just another president on a very long list who sat back and stood by and passed the buck of this direct threat to the next administration. The president had a feeling, again, based on fact, that Iran was going to strike the United States, was going to strike our assets in the region, and he made a determination to launch Operation Epic Fury based on all of those reasons. And I would like the media to actually report on all of them, rather than just picking sound bites from one person in this administration and saying, oh, they're contradicting the other person. No, again, these decisions are not made in a vacuum. They are made by the president's feeling that Iran was going to strike the United States. Alongside Israel, and that has obviously been proven to be the right decision and an effective one at that. Libby, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. A two-part question for you. First, has the president spoken with the family members of those U.S. service members that were killed? Second, given what you've outlined throughout this entire briefing, I mean, the United States has sunk a bunch of Navy ships. We've hit all of these targets. What can Americans expect the goal to be moving forward now that the U.S. has accomplished all of this? What is victory, given we've even taken out Iran's supreme leader? That was an explicit goal.
Again, victory will be determined by the commander-in-chief once the goals and the objectives that we have repeatedly laid out are fully realized. Again, we just in the next few hours will be achieving that dominance over the skies, which means the United States military will be raining missiles and weapons down on Iran to hit these specific targets that have been identified as crucial to take out by the Department of War. Sure, John.
Thanks so much, Caroline. Has the U.S. posture changed in regard to a nuclear North Korea, given the latest strikes on Iran and the fact that stated goal is to make sure that Iran is not a nuclear country.
I don't have any change in position with respect to North Korea today.
Thank you. A quick follow-up. There's been reports that Ali Khamenei's son has been elected as the next supreme leader. Does the administration think that he is a part of the same regime as his father? Would they like people in the country to rise up and get him out of
There's
power?
reports he's been elected or that he's assuming to be elected. One of the likely options.
Pardon me, what was that?
That he's one of the likely options or that he has been elected. Okay, so we'll wait to confirm until someone actually is elected. Caitlin.
You just mentioned that the president is going to attend the dignified transfer for these families. Given what Secretary Hegseth said this morning, is it the position of this administration that the press should not prominently cover the deaths of U.S. service members?
No, it's the position of this administration that the press in this room and the press across the country should accurately report on the success of Operation Epic Fury and the damage it is doing to the rogue Iranian regime that has threatened the lives of every single American in this room. If the Iranian regime had their choice, they would kill every single person in this room. And so we can all be very grateful that we have an administration and that we have men and women in our armed forces who are willing to sacrifice their own lives for the rest of us in this room and for every American across the country and for every troop that is based in the Middle East. That's what these.
Secretary Hegseth was complaining that it was front page news about these 6 service members who were killed.
That's not what the secretary said, Caitlin, and that's not what the secretary meant. And you know it. You know you are being disingenuous. There is not. We've never had a secretary of defense. Who cares
Drones
more?
get through or tragic things happen. It's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad.
Yeah,
As you know, we
the
cover
press
the
does-
deaths of U.S. service members under every president.
The press does only want to make the president look bad. That's a
Like
that's a
Karoline
fact.
Leavitt.
Especially you. No, listen to me. Especially you and especially CNN. And the Secretary of Defense cares deeply about our war fighters and our men and women in uniform. He travels all across this country to meet with them, to connect with them, and your network has hardly ever probably reported on that. You also had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Chairman Kane, who's a brave patriot, standing alongside the secretary at the Pentagon this morning, again expressing his condolences to these families. And I just told you that the President of the United States will be attending their dignified transfer. So please,
That's not making the president look bad. That's showcasing that. As we did in
we
his
expect
first
you to
term
cover
and
that
during
as you
Biden.
should. We expect you to cover that as you should, Caitlin. But you and your network know that you take every single thing this administration says and tries to use it to make the president look bad. That is an objectable fact.
I don't think covering troop deaths is trying to make.
If you're trying to argue right now that CNN's overwhelming coverage is not negative of President Donald Trump, I think the American people would tend to agree, and your ratings would tend to disagree with that as well. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. On the school
Sure.
strike, back to that for a minute. I understand that the U.S. does not target civilian infrastructure. That's what you said. Can you say that there's any evidence right now that it was not a U.S. strike? And then also, you didn't mention Israel in that. Is there any assessment about Israel's potential likely role in that, if at all?
Again, the Department of War is currently investigating this matter, but again, I will reaffirm that the Department of War and the United States Armed Forces do not target civilians, as does the Iranian regime, who kill and execute their own people. Christian.
Two separate issues, Caroline. First, what can you tell us about the military operation in Ecuador? And then
Sure.
secondly, is the president considering invoking the Defense Production Act to boost munition stockpiles while we are in this conflict?
It's not something I've heard the president consider, but as you know, the president has been in a pretty direct correspondence and public correspondence with defense contractors, asking them to aggressively speed up their manufacturing of American-made weapons, which again are the best in the world. With respect to Ecuador, I would point you back to the statement released by the U.S. Southern Command. On March 3rd, Ecuadorian and U.S. military forces launched operations against designated terrorist organizations. These operations are a powerful example of the commitment of partners in Latin America and the Caribbean to combat the scourge of narco-terrorism. And together, we are taking decisive action to confront narco-terrorists who have long inflicted terror, violence, and corruption on citizens throughout the hemisphere. And on that, I would also add that this weekend, I'm pleased to announce the president will welcome the heads of state from 12 nations across our Western Hemisphere in Miami, Florida on Saturday. The point of this newfound Latin America summit is to promote freedom, security, and prosperity in our region. The following countries will be in attendance: Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Honduras, Panama, Paraguay, Trinidad and Tobago, and maybe some others as well. And the president will be speaking with the leaders of this country who have really formed a historic coalition to work together to address criminal narco-terrorist gangs and cartels and counter illegal and mass migration into not only the United States, but the Western Hemisphere, which remains a key and top priority of this president. Thank you very much, everyone. And you'll see the president yourself.